just a continuation of the witch hunt. The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama, or he's guilty. This was treason.
Donald Trump is uniquely unqualified to be president.
There are moments in public life that don't arrive with noise, but end up echoing louder than anything else. This was one of those moments. It began in a setting that felt familiar, a civic forum, a structured conversation, the kind of event designed for thoughtful exchange rather than confrontation. The focus was supposed to be forward-looking, unity, stability, and the future of democratic trust. Nothing about the setup suggested disruption. Then Barack Obama stepped forward. His delivery was exactly what many expected: calm, deliberate, almost understated. He wasn't there to dominate the room. He wasn't there to provoke. At least, not in the way people usually think of provocation. For a while, the conversation stayed within safe boundaries, measured answers, familiar themes. The audience listened, engaged, but relaxed, until one question shifted everything. How do you restore trust when people no longer agree on what's true? Obama didn't rush into the answer. He let the question sit in the air, not as a delay, but as emphasis. And when he began, his tone didn't change, but the direction did. He reframed the issue entirely. Truth, he explained, isn't shaped by repetition or volume, but by verification, by evidence, by whether something can actually hold up when examined closely. It wasn't an attack. It didn't need to be. The room began to change, subtly at first, the kind of shift you don't hear, but feel. People leaned in. The conversation was no longer abstract. It was becoming specific. Visual aids appeared, not flashy, not dramatic, just structured. Timelines, statements, contradictions placed side by side. A quiet, methodical walkthrough of how narratives can take shape and how they can unravel. Then came the pivot. Without raising his voice, Obama moved from general principle to recognizable pattern. The repetition of claims, the persistence of messaging, the way certainty can be constructed without confirmation. He never needed to name names immediately, because by that point, the audience was already connecting the dots. When he did become more direct, the tone didn't sharpen, but the clarity did. Each word felt placed, intentional. The kind of delivery that doesn't overwhelm, but stays with you. Inside the room, the reaction wasn't explosive. There were no interruptions, no visible tension breaking the surface, just a quiet recognition. Something important had just been laid out, and it wasn't easy to dismiss. But outside that room, the response took on a completely different life. Clips began circulating within hours. Not just the content, but the tone, the contrast, the restraint, the precision. It all became part of the story. And then came the response from Donald Trump. It didn't mirror the calm. It moved fast, direct, unfiltered. The remarks were dismissed as politically motivated. The language escalated quickly, framing the moment as part of a broader pattern of unfair targeting. The familiar phrase returned: a witch hunt. What had been a controlled, carefully constructed message was now part of a much louder exchange. And just like that, the moment expanded beyond its original setting. It wasn't just about what was said anymore. It was about how it was answered. Observers began focusing less on the specifics and more on the contrast. One approach built on pacing, structure, and restraint. The other on speed, force, and immediate impact. Two different strategies, two different rhythms, colliding in real time. Media coverage reflected that divide. Some leaned into the substance of Obama's remarks, the emphasis on facts, verification, and long-term credibility. Others highlighted Trump's response, its intensity, its urgency, and what it signaled to his audience. But the real takeaway wasn't confined to either side. It was in the interaction itself. Because in today's media environment, delivery is inseparable from message. Tone doesn't just support the argument, it shapes how the argument is understood. And in this case, tone became the story. As the cycle moved on and headlines shifted, the immediate tension faded, but the underlying contrast remained. A question lingered, one that didn't belong to either figure alone. Does influence come from how strongly something is asserted, or how clearly it can be demonstrated? It's a question that doesn't resolve quickly. Because moments like this don't just reflect disagreement, they reveal something deeper about communication, perception, and the way modern audiences interpret both. One voice relied on discipline and precision. The other ensured the moment carried weight and reach. And somewhere between those two approaches, the audience was left to decide what resonates more in a landscape where every statement competes for attention and every reaction becomes part of the narrative.